morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is The Take. It's Friday, finally, although it's only a 4-day week, but it felt like a long week. And I'll tell you why, because the markets have been all over the place, but mostly having a pretty decent week as we have been pressing and pushing to the upside. As a matter of fact, yesterday, the Dow started off strong, NASDAQ started off strong, S&P started off strong, and they just continued throughout the session. There was no last 15 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, or any of that. Just continued that big move to the upside that we were seeing. Finished close to 350 points to the upside for the Dow. Nearly 260 points for the NASDAQ, which is a big, strong 2.25% move to the upside. That's a nice big move. And then, of course, you look at the S&P, and that closed up about 57 points. So very strong. We closed basically, call it on the highs, and we continued throughout the session. We also were watching the price of crude that has been making a nice recovery after being all the way down at 95 just a couple of days ago, finishing out right around 102, 103 in that kind of a range. The 2s and the 10s, we've been talking about this for a while now. We're kind of breaking away from something here because the 2s, the 2-year up over 3. We got the 10-year up over 3. And yet we aren't seeing that selling that we have seen in the past where we've been able to just basically like clockwork, well, we've gotten a push to the upside or we're pushing over 3 and we see the market start to turn in the selling of the S&P. Not seeing that this time. As a matter of fact, we just continued that nice solid move to the upside. And we are seeing a little bit of a correction right now in some of those commodities. I mean, you look at the start of the month, for instance, with copper. Copper was $4.55, now it's $3.55. You take a look at where oil was at 123, now it's 103. So we have had a bit of a correction in the commodities world as well. Bitcoin, that's been an interesting ride, but that's trading right around 21,700, somewhere in that range. And it's been wild. It's been a crazy ride, no doubt about it. But yesterday, up about 6%. So had a pretty good day itself. And then you look over at volatility, hanging around these mid-25s, 25, 26, 27, kind of in that range. Yesterday, right around those 26s. We did have a little bit less volume yesterday, so that's something that stood out. We've been talking about the volumes being a little bit lighter, and they have been. But still, nonetheless, pretty interesting day. And energy, the leader, again. And energy's led to the downside. It's led to the upside, and it's been a big leader yesterday, up well over 3.5%. Now, I know it's a subsector, but semiconductors also had an incredible day as well. We talked about that last night on Fast Money. Just the huge move that we were seeing out of names like NVIDIA and onsemi and a lot of these various names. Energy, just take a look at some of those names. Chevron, beautiful day. ExxonMobil, BP had a big day to the upside. And then, of course, the beta names, APA and Devon and some of those names really pushing to the upside. We also had consumer discretionary with Amazon and Tesla. Very, very good day. That's consumer discretion. Up about 2.5% yesterday. Technology was up about 2%, led by Apple and Meta and Google and Netflix. All of those pushing to the upside. Financials, a nice bit of a little bit of a positive move to the upside as well. Whether it was Goldman or JP Morgan or Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all had a pretty decent day yesterday. Materials as well. Now that's an area that's sort of been having a little bit of a tough time, but materials had a nice turn yesterday. Look at Freeport and Nucor and some of those names. Nice little push to the upside. I mentioned those semiconductors. It was NVIDIA. It was ON. It was AMD. It was Qualcomm. You go through the group, and as a group, just had a pretty spectacular day, really, across the board. I mentioned some of those beta names as well, but also talking about energy, oftentimes you got to kick right over to the EV space. Look at what Lucid did yesterday. Tesla, Lucid, Nikola, all of those EV type names having a really, Rivian had a really, really solid performance as well. Also throw in Caterpillar and Nike and Salesforce. You get the idea. It seemed like just about everything had a really, really nice move to the upside with a couple of stalled, categories as well. Some of the staples. I look over at Colgate. That was really kind of not a terrible day, but not really keeping up with what was going on in the market, along with Coke. Bristol Myers, a little bit of a surprise that name actually was getting pulled down a little bit as well, because healthcare has basically been on a pretty nice, just consistent move to the upside for, call it, almost the majority of this year. So we have Jobs Friday, right? We come in, those numbers were pretty extraordinary to the upside, a huge beat. Unemployment still sitting right around that 3.6% area as well. So what was the interpretation? And I think the interpretation was, well, what's next? And that is what the markets give us each and every day, right? They want to get what we've got. They digest it very quickly. And then it's what's next? Is the CPI next? Is it the Fed? What is next? We got some interpretation of, because of those numbers, where are we next? And all of that as well. We're going to do 0.75%. That seems to be what everybody's looking at and everybody's figuring on. And that's something that we're all staring at. And basically the transparency of the Fed tells us that as well. So that's what everybody's looking forward to from here. We were down 110 points on the Dow. We were down 150 points on the NASDAQ in the pre-market. And then we got into the market. We just saw a little bit of improvement, a little bit more. The last time I looked, right before coming on here in this first hour of trade, the NASDAQ had recovered all the way from being down 150 to down 100, down 80, all the way up to flat and just a little bit negative. Now, in these last 5 minutes, it may have even struck up into the positive territory. I can't see it right now, but I will tell you this. The Dow was doing the same thing. The Dow really kind of wavering around down 100 points or so, but then started to make this nice move to the upside, up about 60 points to the upside. So a pretty decent flip. Now, where was that flip really coming from? Well, financials did get a little bit better, but it was healthcare. Healthcare was doing a lot of nothing early on. And then in this first hour, just kind of shot to the upside. And you look at those healthcare stocks, it's up over 1% right now. So that's something that I think was a really big push for sure. We also saw improvements in a lot of, and even some of the areas, the categories, the sectors that are in negative territory, they might still be in negative territory, but they're off of those lows. They've cut maybe some of those losses in half. And that's kind of really the theme that we're looking at here. Even staples were up a little bit early. They were up over 0.5% as just before coming on here. So I mentioned the Fed. And as I mentioned, the Fed makes me think right away to the 2-year and the 10-year. 2-year right around 3.11. You've got the 10-year right around 3.08. So here we are. We are in an area once again where we have been seeing some of that selling. We did have the selling early. We'll see if it returns to that as we get a little deeper into the day. This is just the first hour. It's a snapshot, but we still have a long day in front of us. So we'll see how that whole thing does play out. Volatility in the 26s. It's been there. Now we went to the 25s. It's been there a little bit, but it's more in the 26, 27, 28 category. Today, now it's in the 24s, the upper 24. So something to keep an eye on as well, as volatility just kind of slowly coming into play to the downside. And by the way, we got the weekend, right? So we got to start pricing that in as well. Pretty quickly, those guys are going to start changing those machines around a little bit. We might start seeing that volatility come down even a little bit further as we get deeper into the day. We'll see how that plays out. Crude still hanging around that 103 area. So what are some of the names that are kind of the leadership right now? Moderna. Moderna's been on and off. But overall, it's been making strides to the upside. But it's not just been Moderna. We also have United Health. That's another one of those names. It's been on either side as well. It's had some spectacular moves to the upside. It's had some pretty sharp moves to the downside. Today, it's in positive territory. We also have Costco. We got Pepsi moving to the upside. Early on, it was cruise ships getting beat up a little bit. Twitter definitely getting beat up. Anybody who's been following that with Elon Musk, and we talked about this last night on Fast Money, we were talking about, well, what happens with Twitter if he backs away? I can tell you this. I think these analysts all, and I said this last night, all will start to have to recalibrate, because what is the big reason for Elon having a pause? It's the bots, and how many bots are there in that whole process. Anyway, we talked about that last night. We're seeing Tesla shooting to the upside. We're seeing Twitter getting pounded to the downside. Twitter, last I looked, was down over 4%. And meanwhile, we're looking at Tesla was up over a little over 2% or so. So that was something as well. Caesars, Penn National, those kind of names, a little bit under pressure early on, along with Netflix and Airbnb as well as Disney. But it's early in the session, and nothing really in a major way getting hammered to the downside, outside of Twitter down about 4% or so. Got two unusuals for you, and we're out of here. Number one, I'm going to give you Dish. Now, Dish is a name that it's been hitting a little bit more frequently of late with some of this unusual option activity. So what are they doing today? Stock trading a little under 18 and a half. They got a buyer of 5,400 of the July 19 calls. So just out of the money calls. Looking for a little bit of a move. It's not going to take a lot, but it's got to make that move to the upside, and it's got to be at a pretty decent pace. 40 cents to 55 cents is what they paid for those 5,400 calls that were being bought in Dish. Secondly, this name has hit and hit. John and I were just talking about this, not only my brother, but John, who works with me on this. We've been talking about this because it's been hitting day after day after day for weeks, and we've been seeing it on and on and on. ChargePoint. I'm not trying to just beat a dead horse, but I will tell you, yesterday we hit two separate times. First time they were buying 10,000 of the July 14th. The second time they bought 50,000 of the July 22nd 15 calls. Today, they're going to add another 20,000 to the July 22nd 15 calls. Gives you a bit of an idea of the activity that we are seeing in this name. Stock is trading just underneath 14. They're looking for a little bit of a move. It's going to take a move to get up there and start to get these starting to shift and move to the upside. But those July 22nds, of course, you're buying a little bit more time. So that'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. I think everybody should keep an eye on it because we certainly have seen a lot of activity in there of late. Folks, have a great day of trading. Have a very safe weekend and look forward to seeing you on Monday. We've got a full week Monday. Wow, it's going to be tiring. See ya.